Hello everyone, I am the Film Observer, and today we are focusing on something that is not film, nor am I observing it. Because today I'm talking about the top 10 best albums of the year. Let's just get straight into it.
Am I talking to a ghost?
Yeah.
Quadeca has been a popular YouTube rapper for some time now. But unfortunately, like most YouTube rappers, his albums were derivative, unimportant, and cheesy. But I Didn't Mean to Hunt You is none of that, and most of that is due to the fact that this isn't even really a rap album. It is more of alternative rock, and it is really great. With fantastic sounding guitars and beautiful vocals, this album really brings to life what Quadeca can be. With the album's sad and melodic rhythms to its strummy and soulful guitar, this album has lots to offer for almost any listener. Quadeca talks about depression and envy in subtle and not-in-your-face ways that are overall pleasing to the ear. This album is not perfect, but it is a nice project that you should definitely check out. 7 out of 10. Beach House has had a rough discography with some fantastic ahead-of-their-time projects like Depression Cherry and Bloom to having uninspired dream pop sounds that, if anything, are behind the curve. This album, however, is the best and worst of those worlds. It does have a lot of aquarium IMAX movie-ass sounds, but there are many glimpses of return to form for Beach House, with great tracks such as Through Me, Over and Over, Sunset, ESP, New Romance, and of course, Once Twice Melody. The album is pretty bloated, with 18 songs and a total of 1 hour and 24 minutes, many of which minutes were wasted with goofy, useless songs like Pink Funeral and Only You Know that seem like a step in the wrong direction and could have come out in 2006. The album as a whole does work for me, but I do think there aren't quite as many great tracks as I'd hope for, and the album really can't put me to sleep, which is not a great thing, at least for me. 7 out of 10.
Wait a minute. Who finishes this?
Like a lot of people.
No.
I'm not gonna lie, before this album, I had never listened to Pusha T. Pusha T was an artist I was just not familiar with, and I decided to check this out after Fantano gave it a very high rating on his channel. And I'm glad I did, because I really liked it. I've never really listened to street rap before either, or I guess how some people are calling it coke rap, but this was a good introduction, because it wasn't quite as traditional as I thought it was going to be, and it had a lot of style to it, which I was not quite expecting. But I guess the production from Pharrell and Kanye really helped. Overall, this album was inventive, fun, not always my thing, but nice album. 7 out of 10. Un Verano Sin Ti is Bad Bunny's latest album, and I was so excited for it to come out. Bad Bunny is one of my favorite pop artists working today for his incredible production and anthemic vocals. This is not his best, but it is still a fantastic listen from front to back. This features some of Bad Bunny's most laid-back personal songs that have meaningful and sentimental lyrics, which I do not always understand. I can speak Spanish, but definitely not fluently, and especially when he is rapping, I just don't know what's going on and I have to look up the lyrics. But sometimes that doesn't matter. Ojitos Lindos is another one of my favorite songs of the year, and even though I cannot speak the language too well, I've memorized the song word for word because of how crisp the trumpets are, how calming the synths are, and how beautiful the feature is. This album is a bit bloated with some unnecessary songs that bring nothing interesting to the table with a lame beat I've heard a million times and minimalist synths, but overall, Un Verano Sin Ti is not perfect, but it is a very solid 8 out of 10.
It's time to stop! It's time to stop, okay? No more!
Smithereens is singer-songwriter and former YouTuber Joji, taking his next step further into the music world, and I really do love this album. This is where my personal opinions shine through a lot. Do I think this is a good album? For sure. Do I think this is as good as all of the other albums on this list? No. But I have listened to this album more than half of the other albums on here. As many of you probably know, this is an extremely short album, clocking in at just 24 minutes with 9 songs. It is a total of an hour less than the Once Twice Melody album. There are some banging tracks on this one, my favorite being Die For You. I think it is a nice, melancholy, new, and sweet tune. Sure are the lyrics a bit hit or miss with this one, along with the extremely overly dramatic chorus? Yes, but this is a great track. Before the Day Is Over and Dissolve are also some great songs that I've listened to way too many times. Before the Day Is Over is probably the objective best on the album, with a fantastic vocal performance from Joji, and what I assume to be a backup singer on the beginning of the tune. Dissolve, while being overly repetitive with the same guitar chord progression the entire song, it just shows how much some catchy and memorable singing can do to an otherwise nothing song. Joji really doesn't leave his quiet, heady singing in the track, but he does use autotune in a complex and interesting way that makes the song extremely interesting. The now very popular Glimpse of Us is by far the best song Joji has ever written, and the only reason I haven't talked about it yet is because it was released as a single before the album, so it's less credit to the album overall. But the song works well in its context and is a perfect track in my opinion, with a complex, imaginative piano melody and chord progression. Not gonna lie though, the second disc on this album is really quite bland, with a boring demo, a freestyle that does not at all resemble any freestyle I have ever heard, with the only high points being a previously released single and a somewhat catchy but uninteresting stale emo song that has bad lyrics and seems like it belongs in one of Joji's older efforts. Overall, the album has some great tracks that are a major step in the right direction for Joji, and some boring and moderately irritating tracks as well. 8 out of 10.
I pray my dick get big as the Eiffel Tower.
Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers is the first Kendrick Lamar album in 6 years. My expectations were high, as expected. Even though I did not like Damn as much as Good Kid, Mad City or To Pimp a Butterfly, it was still anthemic and emotional, so I was very excited when I heard he released a new single. Then we got the album, and yeah, I'm a bit disappointed. I enjoyed it, but it might be his worst album for me. It has some old school bangers like N95, The Heart Part 5, Die Hard, Silent Hill, Rich Spirit, or Mr. Morale, but the album has some of the most uninspired beats of Kendrick's career. The lyrics, politics, and flows are all on point as usual, but it seems like this album was weakly produced compared to something like Damn. The album is still great, but I was not as enthralled or entertained by this as I was with some of Kendrick's other albums. 8 out of 10.
Toss me my keys. I said my keys.
I thought you said printer.
Why the fuck would I say printer?
The Car by Arctic Monkeys is an extremely divisive list of tracks, some hating the album because it solidifies the Arctic Monkeys' departure from pop rock and furthers their dive into a sort of lounge rock that many dislike. But as a big Arctic Monkeys fan, I must say that it is by no means their best album. I do, however, really like it. Sure, it's classified as lounge rock, but to me, it has a lot more going for it. The album takes several instruments and uses them all to create a big, loud, and captivating overall experience. The song I'm Not Quite Where I Think I Am is one of my favorites of the year, with a funky and old-school bass and guitar progression, an engaging drum beat, and an outstanding vocal performance from Alex Turner. The grandiosity of it all, unfortunately, works to create some bad-sounding tracks as well. Songs like Hello You and The Car sound like they could have been recorded on GarageBand with a failed attempt at a funky rhythm, some terrible drum lines that sound improvised, and a vocal performance that makes you want to jump out a window how off rhythm it is. The album still has funky and soulful tracks all throughout the album, but a few stale songs can really bring the experience down. Hate to say it, but this is another 8 out of 10. What a pleasant delight this album was. Beyonce for me has always been an icon that was just there. I never listened to her music or liked the songs I did hear, but lately I have been liking her songs more and more. Lemonade is a fantastic and personal record that should have made everyone's top 10 list in 2016, and the self-titled album from 2014 is some of the most powerful and important pop I've heard in a while. And this might be her best album yet. I can't decide if it's better than Lemonade, but it sure is close for me. The album opens with a groovy and shiny intro song, which is basically just Beyoncé's brag track. Then it follows up with my favorite track on the album, Cozy, which is a song that makes you want to bang your head around. It has a fantastic beat partially made up of chopped up voices, which is such a groove whenever I see an artist do that. It has some of the most memorable and banging lyrics off any album this year, taking the classic You Don't Wanna Fuck With Us song in a completely new direction. Break My Soul is a fun, danceable, more classic Beyoncé pop track that has Calvin Harris level synths with a fun, bubbly beat in the background. In fact, this whole album is filled with imaginative and very new beats that create this R&B dance pop fusion that really comes together as a fantastic album. 8 out of 10.
Ants.
Holy shit, man. This album is amazing. I would have never expected a random band I've never heard of outdo Arctic Monkeys and Arcade Fire for the best rock album of the year, but here we are. Ants from Up There is a transcendent album. It sways from emotion to emotion so well and makes you think deep with its lyrics that are leaps and bounds above what the most popular rock bands are doing now. The structure of the songs are so different from mainstream rock these days, and it seems like Black Country New Road is a very emotional, down-to-earth band that has so much to say about relationships and how those relationships end. Ants from Up There is reminiscent of some classic breakup albums and does such a great job taking an old, used-up idea and making it their own. The dynamics are consistently changing and give you a big uprising feeling as the band takes you deeper and deeper on this roller coaster of emotions. The album evokes so many natural emotions about resentment, feeling like the outsider, and of course fulfillment through its powerful and unique lyrics that have only really been perfected by this album, by this band. And I can't talk about this album without mentioning the one and only Basketball Shoes. One of, if not the best, outro songs in a rock album ever. So filled with rage, but only calmly leading up to a point of explosion that is just musical bliss. 9 out of 10.
You've been in the dark for way too long. It's time to walk into the light and accept your fate with open arms.
Dawn FM is one of the best pop albums I've ever heard. I might as well just stop there. The album is basically the second half of After Hours, which is The Weeknd's last record that, like this album, had an aggressively 80s atmosphere. The whole idea of 80s pop being put back into the mainstream has been done to death by this point, but The Weeknd was one of the first popular artists to do so, so I give them a pass. After Hours was a fun and unique album that had a few bangers like After Hours, Save Your Tears, In Your Eyes, but the difference between After Hours and Dawn FM is this. After Hours had a few great songs surrounded by mostly boring and bloated sounds that should have stayed in the 80s, but Dawn FM had just a few more great songs on it. Sacrifice, Out of Time, Best Friends, Gasoline, How Do I Make You Love Me, Take My Breath, Here We Go Again, Is There Someone Else, Starry Eyes, and Every Angel Is Terrifying. And those are just my favorites. The whole album worked perfectly together. Most of that is due to the fact that this is a partially conceptual album. It tells the story of an old man who has lost all he once had, is at the end of his days, and takes the days he does have for drugs, parties, and clubs. At the end of his life, there's a radio station called Dawn FM, which will soothe your transition into the afterlife. How fucking cool is that idea? And the fact that this isn't just a gimmick album. The album has layers. It tells a cohesive and well thought out story, but it still maintains songs that hit just as hard while listening to them separately from the rest of the album. And you know that this one is getting a big old 10 out of 10. I don't know if it's because this album was released within the first 7 days of the year, but critics need to get this shit on their top 10s. Anyway, that's my list. Thank you guys so much for watching. Comment if I should do more music-based videos, and have a great day.